Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Cruising your way on this episode of Off 90. See the difference 70 years can make. We compare a Minnesota town today with what it was like back in the 40s. Meet a woodcarver who marches to the beat of a different drummer when it comes to his sculpting. And attend a citywide festival that kept the town rocking through the whole weekend. It's all just ahead, Off 90. Hi, I'm Barbara Keith. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Off 90. Back in the 40s, an amateur filmmaker made a documentary about the town he lived in, which was Cologne, Minnesota. Learn what happened to that film and how Cologne has changed from the time the film was shot to today.
I think it is a hunger in our hearts to see what happened before. How can you know what's going to happen today if you don't look back to what happened yesterday?
Any form of art is important to our cultural history, but we think film especially is showing a time and place. They record what places looked like at the time, and they just give a very good cultural record of what survives. Cologne is basically a home movie made about Cologne, Minnesota, a small town, I think of about 300 people back in the late 30s when it was filmed.
It has like a full circle of life from the agriculture and people's enjoyment of life, you know, the hard work, and that just created a full spectrum of what it was like at that time.
About 80% of films made before 1930 no longer exist. And I think 50% before 1950 shows you how much has already been lost. We're here at the Packard campus of the Library of Congress. It's the National Center for Audiovisual Preservation. We house the audiovisual collections of the Library of Congress, recorded sound, film, television, in all formats from all eras in each of those categories. We have about 3.5 million recordings, you know, several 100,000 films, and just countless stuff keeps coming in. We're trying to create a registry of what we think are important American films, not necessarily the best American films or anything like that, but just films which do resonate and continue to resonate as important artifacts in American history and culture. It was something created by Congress back in 1989 when they had the colorization controversy of people colorizing black and white films. And they set up a National Film Preservation Board to choose 25 films each year for the National Film Registry. Beginning in 1992, the colorization issue was settled outside the library and the board, done by the industry and the filmmakers, and we focused on preservation efforts since then. Well, the registry does contain well-known American classics from Casablanca.
You knew how much I loved you, how much I still love you.
To famous westerns such as Stagecoach and The Searchers, and famous horror films, Dracula, Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein. The way Congress set up the National Film Registry, it was meant to reflect America's film heritage. And we define America's film heritage very broadly, not just Hollywood films, but also documentaries, silent films, films of the avant-garde. Home movies can often be just as important as some Hollywood films. Along with all the famous films we added that year, we added an orphan film called Cologne, from the Diary of Ray and Esther, a good visual record of the small town of Cologne, Minnesota in the late 30s.
Well, it was a film made by a lady that lived in Cologne, and she was writing a diary. It was her life and how she liked it here, and they were about to move on, and this was the legacy that she left.
I was born in 1941 on a farm south of here, a dairy farm. And if you see the depiction in the Cologne movie where they talk about the new modern conveniences, they have a hay rack with tracked horses and a hay loader in the behind. That was one of my first work experiences. I was old enough to steer the well-trained horses, could go around the windrow, and Dad would pile the hay over me and until we got the whole hay rack full.
I probably would say it was a one-horse town. The farmers came to town to get things, and sometimes the wife came along and went to the grocery store. The old city hall had a bowling alley in the basement. There was a little bit of recreation. Friday nights they'd have a film on the street for the kids. My husband talks about the time he went in the grocery store and they usually gave the kids a little bag of candy to take home. It was a very simple life. That's what small town America was in those days, and the farm area.
It's a very tightly edited, very nicely edited film. It's a good, case of showing realism of what the society was like. And this is just a matter-of-fact, record of that town at the time.
Inside of this building here is one of the treasures of Cologne. Actually was part of the movie back in 1939. It's our La France Brockway. It's a 1924 fire engine. We are working on restoring this beauty for the city. It did come here in 1925 as a brand new piece of equipment. Has stayed a part of our history ever since.
Fire department celebration in the summer was a big deal for us farm kids to come to town to see the parade and the civic celebration.
Small towns always had a parade, and that was the big thing, that everybody came to Cologne and watched the parade. Kids love parades. Today they throw candy out and everything, but in those days it was just a way to get together, to socialize.
I think that the film from 1939 and looking at Cologne today, there's a lot of things that I think have stayed the way they are. We're looking down Main Street. A lot of the buildings that were there then are still here now. The people there were just genuine, friendly, and willing to help. And that's the way Cologne is now.
This was the old Moorbucker's bar, and this is the bar that's featured in the Cologne film. Now it's the In-Town 2. It's been around since about late 1860s, and we're still here and still serving people, and they're very friendly, very, very warm, very caring. You can't meet a bunch of better people.
It's important that the generations beyond that see what life was like, and it was a hard life.
You can't tell what it is today without knowing what the past was. So when you get to share with people the things that happened in your lifetime, you put feeling in it when you tell people about your story of your hometown and your families and things.
This truck, like a lot of things, it's just a great piece of history, has a lot of stories to tell, and just by being here it tells another story of how our community is committed to history and also committed to the future.
The registry, when it was set up, the three criteria were culturally important, historically important, or aesthetically important. We work here to get the material in and preserve it in the best possible condition we can. And the good thing about film is that if you preserve it in a good state and you store it in the proper conditions, it will last for hundreds of years.
Wells is a woodcarver who goes against the grain when it comes to choosing his subjects. His creations seem like they belong on album covers for heavy metal bands. Learn about Ken's need for independence and where he gets his inspiration.
It's a passion. It keeps me sane, just like every artist feels that way, that I am more than this. I can go do this, I can grab this log and I can make this out of it. And the other thing is it challenges me to get more diverse, more far out, if you will. Every time I try something, I try to top my last piece. My name is Ken Wells, and I'm a woodcarver of fantasy art. The reason I do what I do, fantasy art, and I call it heavy metal art, if you will, is because I've seen so many the bears and eagles. It's a pattern cut. Even I have been guilty of doing pattern cuts, but I would rather every piece be different and no other woodcarver is doing anything like it. And I really want to get a sense of energy, mystery out of it that you just don't get from your standard bear. I want every piece to tell a story. I would say probably 32 years I've been doing it. I started grabbing logs out of my dad's woodpile, and I started just playing around with that and gradually bought some more tools and made really bad art. But I loved doing it, so I kept doing it. My day will start and I will have no idea what I'm going to work on until I drive up here, and sometimes I'll get here and walk around in circles for a while and look at things and look at things. And I am a horrible sketch artist, so I do no drawings. I just try to remember the image I'm trying to get out of the wood, and then I go and do it. I'll start carving something randomly, a skull or something, and then I'll work with some flame effects and just see where it goes. Then I'll figure out the general shape. I'll remove big chunks of wood and then just work it in from there. If I'm trying to get something real serpent-like and flowing, I'll use cedar for that. If I'm going to do, say, a face, you know, where I really want people to see the face, I don't want a lot of color running through it, so I'll go with something like pine, something a little more of a blonde wood. If I'm going to do a raven, I'll look for a dark wood, a black walnut or a Russian olive. I always start at the top, work my way down, then I can adjust as I go. This log, it looks straight, so there's not a lot of contours, so I'm not going to run into any surprises. I'll do a motorcycle lunging out of the ground, kind of like a comet. I'd like to cut hard and heavy at first, and then after a while I kind of like to slow down and make sure I don't screw up. I like the idea of it being one piece. That way the grain flows, you know, all the way through it, and it doesn't look like, you know, Elmer's glue, you know, stuck on. One thing I do is I'm constantly circling it. If you stand in one spot too long, you'll lose that perspective. You'll forget what you're doing on the other side. It's different than sitting in front of an easel. You're just exhausted a lot of times from it. It's so physical. You really feel like you got a lot accomplished. It's just an accomplishment. It wasn't a wasted day at all. One is called Hell, and I wanted to do a real surrealistic piece that you could walk around and really never find a blank spot. It's filled with something. I really wanted something intense there. I wanted something that people would really look at and go, wow, this is just a pillar of agony. And that kind of intensity is what I really try to get. I've had negative feedback at times from people, but I generally gain strength from that, and I feel that separates me and sets me apart from other artists. And I don't think that all art should be warm and fuzzy. I think some things in art should make you feel and shock you maybe.
From folk to rap, Winona's Midwest Music Fest has it all. For one whole weekend, over 100 bands made the trip to the river town to play their brand of music, and we got a front seat. Learn what goes into planning and executing a festival of this scale.
We're really excited to be hosting the Midwest Music Fest that's celebrating its 5th year in town. And it's a music fest that encompasses about 13 venues and more than 130 performers.
Many of these small towns, you know, the downtowns have kind of died, and so, but this town has had an art scene going on here for about 10 years, and we really wanted to bring people from out of town here to come and experience Winona, and just people from in the town who might not spend much time downtown or who might not go out and see live music that much. Hey, we thought we'd do a bunch of different genres, just like South by Southwest, and figure it will be a little bit of something, maybe not for everybody, but for a lot of people.
Two gins swinging, the right elbow. Opposite lady with the left elbow. Two gins swinging again with the same old thing.
Misuse my trust.
Every facet of this town, you can feel it when it's Midwest Music Fest. It's a lot of stuff jam-packed in one weekend. This tends to be a really quiet town, and this is a perfect concentration of everything that makes it amazing.
A lot of my performance started here in Winona. In my years of going to school here, there was a lot of community behind supporting musicians like myself, solo musicians, folk artists. And so it felt really good to live in a community where my artistry was supported.
I met a girl, her boat broke down in Minnesota. I said, I can help you, but I can surely be your friend.
My wife Emily is from here. She was born and raised in Winona, and it's an amazing experience for me every time I come here. I just love the town. I love being here. Some larger towns, I won't bother naming, you know, it's not such a strong sense of community. It's like you go play the show. Here's the very black kind of painted venue. Here's the green room with all the dirty pictures drawn on the walls by every rock and roll band that ever came through here. Get it over with and get out of here, you know, and it's fine, and I do that, and people that come to the show, they're great, and they're excited to be there, and everything's happy, but it's missing that sense of, you know, we live here, we all live here together, you know, it's like you're coming to our house.
The Midwest Music Fest is really around community and bringing local venues and people that live in the community and bringing people from outside the community all together to celebrate music and to celebrate the true art of, true art of music.
Everything is kind of touched by live music that, you know, recordings can only kind of approximate, you know. And in the scheme of, you know, everybody's talking about why vinyl's so good nowadays because there's no compression and blah blah blah. Well, there's no compression at all when you go to a show. I mean, that's your best bet for hearing really good audio is to just go see a musician play.
I spend all my time just loving only you. I spend all my time gonna give you what I got and then give you more, baby.
I feel like all of the music that I was exposed to when I was a kid really helped open me up for the future of just listening, being open to listening to all sorts of things, and not even just music, but exploring other parts, other different people and cultures and foods and everything. I think music plays such a big role in laying the foundation for me anyway.
Language that we all participate in and we're all entitled to. I think, you know, I love sitting home and listening to music. I do it all the time. I can only do it for so long before I need to play, you know, and work something out and maybe go see someone else play. It's the next piece of the pie, you know. And I think if you don't get into that piece of the pie, you're missing out on something.
I feel like we're moving away from having that real human connection of being with each other and sharing experiences. And so seeing a band live and listening to music, watching music live is really important because it's a whole different energy you get when you're there in front of the musician and they are sharing the experience with the audience. It's a mutual feeling and it feels good.
There's nothing like having that experience of seeing someone live, and then when you put it in our festival experience, there's all these intimate different venues, and so you get to see people in, you know, the old church back here, or the Masonic Temple, or some of the bars that are already doing music in town. So I feel like that variety adds something to it.
Tonight I'm playing at the Masonic, which is a larger place and beautiful old space and got a lot of history in it, and the sound is amazing. I've played there twice or maybe 3 times now. Give me one of them $200 room downtown till I get my check, brother. I might have to hang around. I gotta roll myself. I gotta roll myself. Gotta roll myself here from this wicked world. It's a space that you feel like has been kind of not repurposed, but like given a meaning. I think a lot of places, you know, have this history. I don't want to get too much into like ghosts and spirits because I'm not really sure what I think about that kind of stuff, but it feels sometimes like, you know, the place kind of wakes up and whatever history lurks in the walls comes out and says, hey, people are here again. You know, the whole place kind of vibrates again, and the Masonics feels like it does that to me.
I think the Midwest Music Festival has gained quite a reputation in the state and in the Midwest, and it's brought, I think, a recognition of Winona as a place where great arts flow.
Every year it's just growing more and more, and this year is just a really good example of how far it's come, because in just a very short time this festival is, I think, drawing a lot of attention from a lot of people very interested in music.
That's all for this episode. Please help Off 90 meet its financial obligations by becoming a member of KSMQ Public Television. Give us a call at 1-800-658-2539 or sign up online at ksmq.org. Thanks for watching. Join us next time, Off 90.
Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.